Okay, hi, welcome to Virtual CB1A. This is part 2 of Chapter 1, 1-3, Sampling Methods. So, hindi natin siya natapos kahapon because of some battery issues. So, this is the part for the formal definition of the sampling methods that we discussed yesterday. So let's start. In systematic sampling, we select some starting point and then select every kth, such as every 50th element in the population. So if you still remember the example that we had yesterday, we had 10 students and then we started with student number 4. And then k is equal to 3. So every third student, sineselect natin siya from the group. Now, let's have convenience sampling. So, for convenience sampling, ito yung may bias. Kasi ang kinukuha lang natin, those data that are very easy to get. And then we have stratified sampling. We subdivide the population into at least 2 different subgroups or strata, so that subjects within the same subgroup share the same characteristics, such as gender. Then we draw a sample from each subgroup or stratum. Okay. So, ang example natin ito from yesterday ay yung barangay. So, the 9 barangays of Paite. So, every barangay, you will pick some respondents proportional to the population. So, say for example, Barangay Uno has the most number of residents. So, sila yung pinakamalaki ang populasyon. Dapat yung number of samples that you will get from Barangay Uno will correspond or will be proportional to their population. Dapat sila rin yung pinakamarami pagdating sa sample. And say for instance, ang Barangay 9 yung pinakamaunti ang population. For the sample, sila rin yung may pinakakukonting representative. Now, let's discuss cluster sampling. So, ito yung may mga hindi makakasali na certain groups. We first divide the population areas into sections or clusters. Then we randomly select some of those clusters and choose all the members from those selected clusters. Okay. So, ang example natin ito, again, yung barangay kahapon. Halimbawa, ang gusto lang natin kunan ng respondents ay Barangay 1, 3, 4, and 5. And then all the other barangays will be left. Hindi na sila kasali dun sa study. Pero si Barangay 1, 3, 4, 5, lahat ng residente nila dun, isasali mo. So, lahat ng kasama dun sa sampling frame nila, kasali rin dun sa study. Now, let's talk about multistage sampling. So, itong multi-stage sampling, actually, ano lang to, combination of all, or combination of some, or all, of the sampling methods that we discussed earlier. So, pwedeng isama mo lahat. Halimbawa, mag-ano ka muna, cluster sampling ka. After that, mag-stratified ka. And then, after that, mag-convenience sampling ka. So, if you use a multiple sampling method for every stages in your study, you are performing multi-stage sample design. Tingnan natin yung example. The U.S. government unemployment statistics are based on surveys of households. It is impractical to personally survey each household in a simple random sample because they would be scattered all over the country. Instead, the U.S. Census Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics collaborate to conduct a survey called the Current Population Survey. A recent survey incorporates a multi-stage sample design, roughly following these steps. So, number 1, the entire United States is partitioned into 2,007 different regions called primary sampling units. So the primary sampling units are the metropolitan areas, large counties, or combinations of smaller counties. The 2007 primary sampling units are then grouped into 824 different strata. So, out of 2007, nagkaroon tayo ng mga smaller groups. So, nagkaroon na lang tayo ng 824 na groups. So in each of the 824 different strata, one of the primary sampling units is selected so that the probability of selection is proportional to the size of the population in each primary sampling unit. So again, stratified pa rin tayo. Next, in each of the 824 selected primary sampling units, census data are used to identify a census enumeration district, with each containing about 300 households. Enumeration districts are then randomly selected. Dito, cluster sampling na tayo. Kasi randomly selected na lang yung mga district. Merong mga district na hindi na makakasali dun sa sample natin. In each of the selected enumeration districts, clusters of about 4 addresses contiguous whenever possible are randomly selected. A responsible person in each of the 60,000 selected households is interviewed about the employment status of each household member of age 16 or older. So dito convenient sampling na lang tayo. So for every stage, iba't ibang sampling method yung ginagamit until you get the desired number of samples that you want. So this multi-stage sample design includes a combination of random, stratified, and cluster sampling at different stages. The end result is a very complicated sampling design, but it is more practical, less expensive, and faster than using a simpler design, such as a simple random sample. Now let's go to part 2. Medyo mabilis tayo. Beyond the basics of design of experiments and collecting sample data. Mhm. So earlier, nag-discuss tayo ng observational studies. Ang example natin dito, yung ice cream and drowning. Correlation between ice cream and drowning. Instead of, and also, yung texting and driving. Yun. So, instead of performing an experiment, pwedeng observational study na lang. Meron tayong tatlong type ng observational study. So, discuss natin sila. Observational study, observe and measure but do not modify. So, paano tayo nagka-classify ng observational study? When are the observations made? So, it is according to time. So, past period of time, tinatawag natin siyang retrospective study or case control. Go back in time to collect data over some past period. One point in time, ito halimbawa balik tayo sa retrospective. May span siya, for example, from 2005 to 2021, yung ganun. In the past, pero over a certain period. So, may interval. Dito naman sa cross-sectional study, one point in time lang. Data are measured at one point in time. So, isa lang. Wala siyang range, wala siyang interval. Next, forward in time, prospective or longitudinal or cohort study. Go forward in time and observe groups sharing common factors such as smokers and non-smokers. So, sa future naman. Okay, these are the definitions. Hindi ko na siya i-discuss kasi medyo malinaw na naman tayo dito sa graph. Next, experiments. In an experiment, confounding occurs when we can see some effect, but we can't identify the specific factor that caused it. For example, the ice cream and drowning observational study in example 2. See also the bad experimental design illustrated in figure 1-5. So, meron ulit tayong figure mamaya na pupuntahan sa susunod na page. Where confounding can occur when the treatment group of women shows strong positive results. So, tingnan natin sila. Ito muna yung A. This is a bad experimental design. Why? As you can see, for the treatment group, lahat ng respondents natin ay female, women. And then for the placebo group, lahat ng respondent natin ay male. So, bakit bad experimental design to? So, treat all women subjects and give the men a placebo. The problem is, we don't know if effects are due to sex or to treatment. Possibly, magre-react differently yung medicine or yung treatment to male and female kasi magkaiba sila ng body chemistry. 'Di ba? So, hindi natin alam kung ang effectivity ba nung drug ay due to sex or other factors na hindi nakasama dun sa study. Meron tayong intervening variable. Mhm. Asan na tayo? Aha. Ito, the SAC vaccine experiment, yung polio vaccine natin kanina, illustrates one method for controlling the effect of treatment variable. So, it used a completely randomized experimental design. So, parang toss coin yung nangyari. I-assign nila dun sa bata. Saan ka mapupunta? Kasi di ba ang probability of getting a head and a tail, 50-50 yan. Basta fair yung coin mo. So, isang bata, saan ka mapupunta? Treatment or placebo? Next na bata, toss coin, treatment or placebo? Yun. And double blinding yung experiment. Hindi alam ng mga bata kung placebo or treatment group sila. Hindi rin alam ng doktor and medical practitioners kung yung in-administer nila ay placebo ba or treatment. Okay. Next, punta tayo dito sa B. Completely randomized experimental design. Use randomness to determine who gets the treatment and who gets the placebo. So, random talaga siya. Pwedeng mapunta sa babae, pwedeng mapunta sa lalaki. Uh, Pwedeng mapunta sa babae yung treatment, pwedeng mapunta sa lalaki yung treatment. Fair. Everyone who were included in the sampling frame have equal units of being selected as a respondent for the treatment. Ganon din sa placebo. C. Meron tayong randomized block design. Dito kasi sa completely randomized experimental design, may possibility na hindi evenly distributed or hindi proportional yung number ng women sample mo sa population. Tapos sa male samples, hindi rin may chances din na hindi proportional yung number nila dun sa population. Pero pagdating dito sa randomized block design, you have to form a block of women and a block of men. Gagawa ka muna ng subgroup. And then within each block, randomly select subjects to be treated. Okay? So, by using randomized block design, you will be sure that each group will have a representative for your study. Now, let's go to D. We have the match pair design. So, ito yung very popular design for testing certain, anong tag dito? Yung mga slimming pills. Ayan. So, if you are going to check whether a slimming pill is effective or not, syempre, you have to check the weight of your respondents first before they take the drug. And then, after a certain period of time, you will weigh them in again. And then, you will check if there is a significant loss in their weights. So, yun yung pinakang-perfect na example dito. Pinakamadaling maintindihan din. So, if you want to measure the effect of something, you can perform match pair design or pairwise design. Ito yung may pre-test, may post-test on some books. And you have to take note na hindi unique yung respondents mo sa before and after. Kasi kung sino yung mga respondents mo before, sila rin yung magiging respondents mo after. And then you will compare their scores before and after. Hindi mo sila i-compare with one another. You will compare them dun sa score nila before and after. Okay? Unlike dun sa iba na si Alex i-compare kay Bob, i-compare kay Chris. Dito hindi. Si Alex, i-compare mo siya sa sarili niya before and after. Okay? Ayan. So, skip na natin to since napaliwanag na natin siya kanina. Yan. Dito tayo sa sampling errors. In statistics, you could use a good sampling method and do everything correctly, and yet it is possible to get wrong results. No matter how well you plan and execute the sample collection process, there is likely to be some error in the results. The different types of sampling errors are described here. Okay. A sampling error or random sampling error occurs when the sample has been selected with a random method, but there is a discrepancy between a sample result and the true population result. Such an error results from chance sample fluctuations. For example, nagsampling ka, nagsampling method ka, but your representatives, yung mga respondents na nakuha mo as sample, naipon sila dun sa isang tail ng population. Kasi di ba sa isang population, kung natatandaan nyo pa before, our population can be normal or skewed to the left or to the right. So, halimbawa, nag-sampling ka. Ay, sorry. Naku, naglalag siya. Wait lang ha. Ayan. Hmm? Nagloloko siya. Okay. So, halimbawa, ganito. Yan. Medyo hindi siya perfect na bell. Nag-sampling ka, pero ang mga nakuha mo, nandito sila sa taas. Sila yung nandito. Yan. By chance, nag-sampling ka nga, pero ang nakuha mo, yun nasa isang tail lang. Hindi ka nakakuha ng true representative of the population. Kasi dapat evenly distributed yun eh. Or at least, magre-reflect yung characteristic ng totoong population. So, from your statistical treatment or study, yung figure na nakuha mo, hindi siya valid na, or hindi siya reliable na reflection ng totoong scenario sa population. Next, a non-sampling error is the result of human error, including such factors as wrong data entries, computing errors, questions with biased wording, false data provided by respondents, forming biased conclusions, or applying statistical methods that are not appropriate for the circumstances. Ayan. So, for example, kasi di ba ang daming available na formula sa statistics, ang daming test na pwede mong gamitin. Uh, and also, dun sa mga statistical softwares and packages, basta may data input ka dyan, pwede ka mag-compute. But the question is, tama ba yung computation mo or tama ba yung treatment na ginamit mo for your variables? Nasasagot ba ng tama yung research problem mo? So this is under non-sampling error. Tapos yung non-random sampling error is the result of using sampling method that is not random. Ito yung mga may bias. For example, convenience sampling at saka yung voluntary response. Na-discuss natin kahapon. Okay, so ikakat ko na siya dito. Yes, natapos natin si hanggang sampling error. And then, I will make Ay, hindi. Wag pala muna natin siyang i-cut. Magsagot tayo ng tatlo ulit. Yung mga maiksi na lang, syempre. So, number 2, blinding. What does it mean when we say that the study cited in exercise 1 was double-blind? So, na-discuss na natin kanina, double-blind siya kasi hindi alam ng mga respondents, first na blinding, hindi alam ng mga respondents, hindi alam ng mga bata kung saang group sila kasali, kung sa placebo or sa treatment. Pangalawang blinding, hindi alam ng mga medical practitioners kung yung in-administer nila ay placebo or treatment. Next, wag na natin gamitin yung mga may exercise 1. Kasi ayokong bumalik sa mga exercises. Ano to? Ay, ito pala. Cormorant density. Ayan. So, cormorant bird population densities were studied by using the line transect method with aircraft observers flying along the shoreline of Lake Huron and collecting sample data at intervals of 20 kilometers. So, dito, yan, nakalagay na yung clue natin, intervals of every 20th kilometer. So, kate kilometer natin ay 20th kilometer. So, meron tayong gagamitin na skipping method. So, this is systematic. Okay, the sexuality of women was discussed in Sheer Height's book, Women and Love, A Cultural Revolution. Her conclusions were based on sample data that consisted of 4,500 mailed responses from 100,000 questionnaires that were sent to women. So, this is voluntary response sample. So, convenience siya papatak. Ano ba? Maganda dito. Ito, class survey. The author surveyed a sample from the population of his statistics class by identifying groups of males and females, then randomly selected 5 students from each of those two groups. So this is stratified. Okay? Ano pa kaya? Okay na yun? So, thank you for listening. And then, for the next video, dun na tayo sa chapter 2. Ayan. Pero for chapter 2, meron na kasing mga naunang video dun sa cumulative review na ibinigay ako. Okay, ito yung susunod nating topic, frequency distributions for organizing and summarizing data, histograms, graphs that enlighten, and graphs that deceive, and scatter plots, correlation, and regression. Okay? So thank you for listening and keep safe. Bye!